Hi, guys. Thanks for joining us on the Activate and Illuminate podcast with Mel. I'm your host, Mel. Together, we're going to be diving into some stories of ordinary people doing a little bit of extraordinary things. People who've maybe pushed their bodies, their mindsets, or maybe society's paradigms. So you're going to find yourself maybe wanting to laugh, cry, or even be inspired. We would invite you to share, like, and subscribe, to sign up for our newsletter as well on activateandilluminate.com. Now, just keep in mind that this information that you are going to hear is informational and educational for entertainment purposes only. This does not constitute professional advice of any kind. The views expressed are those of myself and guests only. Listeners are encouraged to seek professional and legal advice regarding their own situations. So, thank you for joining us. We appreciate your time, and thanks again for being here. Well, if you're here listening today, I think you are going to love who we have coming on. His name is Tony Chin. Now, I'm telling you, he has done something a little extraordinary. He has documented his mother's journey in a book called The Freedom Swimmers. Now, his mother swam a harrowing exit out of communist China quite some time ago, and he is sharing with us his family's legacy and why he's even here today. So this book, it's called The Freedom Swimmers, is something that I found personally just spellbinding. And so I tracked him down. It took me some time, but I tracked him down, and he's here with us to share his journey. Hello, everyone. Well, today I have the honor of being here with Tony Chin. Now, Tony has a fascinating family story that he has done what a lot of people with a family story haven't done, and that is basically freeze it in time so that all of us have the ability to read it and know how important it was. So he is the author of a book called The Freedom Swimmers, and his family story is just so relevant, I think, today. So I'm going to let him talk about it and go into it. Welcome, Tony. Yeah, tell us a little bit about your family story, and we'll go from there.
Well, first thing, thank you for having me. Actually, haven't done a podcast in a little bit, so it's nice to be back here on podcast here. Yeah, my name is Tony Chin. I'm a 20-year member of the Police Service, and I wrote a book about my mother and how she escaped communist China, and she had to swim across a part of the ocean to get to a safe place, actually. So yeah, how did the book come about? I always learned about the story, and people hear about stories like that all the time from their parents about harrowing things to get out of the countries that they were. And I felt that it was very important for me and also for my daughters that they hear from the mouth what the actual events that occurred when my mother actually did leave China, instead of coming from me, which I probably weren't be able to give the proper story that I could have. So I decided to pretty much do an essay, I guess, at the very beginning about my mother and continue on with that. And as the story kept on going and as the months kept on going and the interviews were going, I felt like, holy mackerel, there's a lot more to the story than what I initially knew. So I endeavored to kind of make a story about it because I thought it'd be actually a really good story. And the essay and the story was only supposed to be kept within the family, so my daughters would know what the story would be. So I decided to do that. And once the story was completed, I had it sent out to a few people to review. And when they read it, they kind of came back to me and said, you know what, you should give this to other people to read, like send this out to other people so they can read this, because it's really relevant to the time. And it's really important that they know about not just the history, but also about my family and what has gone on in this world. So it was really hard for me to say yes to that, but I finally did say yes. And so that went through another 4-year ordeal of everything else I had to go through, and I finally got it published. And I was, like I said, I am definitely been I can't even put into words, like, astonished what the response I've got from the book itself. I've had emails from all over the world giving me all kind words, and not just also from you, Melanie, who just read the book here or read the book. and enjoyed it, and how much they just stated that they, loved it and they love the story about it. And that's the best thing I could do and give respect and homage to my mother, I guess, and to my family. So I guess I'm okay with that. Yeah, that's pretty much about the gist of what's going on with the book itself.
Well, I read this book and I'll be honest with you, I haven't necessarily, it takes a lot. A lot of the reading that I do isn't necessarily novels. And it's been a long time since I had read a novel that, even though it's nonfiction, it's been a long time since I got engrossed in one that I like essentially read in like a day.
Yes.
Like I was like so taken with this story. You just had to know what happened. And it's interesting when you say that, she swam across communist China. I'm just going to read like a part of this prologue here that got to me when I was looking at this book again, because I actually didn't realize it the first time. And so she had basically swum across. Her body had broke down. Her small body couldn't take anymore. She thought she had died, but the sea roar was still in her ears, and the morning sun was on her skin for a moment before it was swallowed by the shadows now looming over her. The shadows made clicking noises as though speaking in some alien insect language. Her vision cleared. The shadows became men, young men, holding rifles. She was back where she had started. So she swam all the way across there and into the hands of the enemy.
Yeah, that's practically what happened. She knew at that time that swim had to be done at a certain time because the tide would bring her back. And she obviously left too late on the first attempt. And she ended back in the almost exact same spot. It wasn't the exact same spot, but it was pretty darn close. So, and next thing you know, she had to go through the whole ordeal again sometime in the near future.
Wow.
Yeah.
So how much time from when she first attempted till she actually made it?
Well, the story breaks up into obviously two parts, and obviously the first attempt, and when she does go through it and gets caught, and she was in prison for a little bit, and obviously there was a whole bunch of actions that occurred during that time, but it wasn't like what you would think be like years down the road. It was months because she she obviously had the willpower to keep going, and she just felt that she can't quit after that. And so she pushed, like I said, she pushed on pretty hard. And you would think, like I said, it would be years and years of planning, but she was able to do it in a few months and get ready to go again. And I hate to ruin the ending of the book, but she does survive. So because I'm here, obviously. So
Wow.
yeah, like it's definitely a
You're
hard story there. So
Explain the story coming from, where did she come from to where did she go? And then how long after was she able to come to Canada?
well, the start of the book obviously starts when she was a lot younger and when she was a young kid. And as she grows up and when she becomes into the teenager years, like when she's becoming into the 18, 19 range, she starts to really wonder what's going on with the government. And she makes that really the hardship to decide to leave. And that's the part of the preparation which took over a few years to prepare and to finally complete it. And when she did complete it in itself, she really had to go through not just from where she lived, because where she lived was part of the southern part of China, which was only the central portion, which is in Guangzhou, which is a large city. And as the communist country was taking it over, she was moving into a small farm with her grandmother, and which was just outside of there. So to get to the ocean, to get to where she was actually part of the story, where she actually does swim into the ocean and into what's Macau now, is that she had to go through numerous cities and towns through bike or through walking and hiking through mountain ranges to get through and get to the ocean side where she was able to start to swim. The whole story in itself is not just about the swim, but also part the endeavor of having her friends help her in the hiking and into the mountain ranges, into these strange little towns that she was walking through during the middle of the night. And there was a whole bunch of little adventures that she had to go through to get to that part, which is probably the most exciting part. Was like you would think it would be the swimming, but throughout the whole endeavor was when I was doing the interviews with her was very exciting to me, just hearing what she had to go through, what she had to hide from, and what the soldiers were doing, or even other civilian, the townspeople were around that she had to kind of hide from too.
So if the townspeople would have known, would they have turned her in?
Very likely they would have. She was always worried about that because where she lived in itself had a specific what they call dialects, but they were really accents, really how we think about it, like out east a type of accent to how the West have. And the one crazy thing about apparently in China is that every little town had these had their own dialects. So she knew if she spoke out in any one of these small towns, they would have known that she probably didn't belong there. And a lot of the times the government controlled who was in these towns, who was in these cities, what was crossing into each border into towns. And even on the ocean front, there were guard fronts everywhere where she had to hide from the soldiers. So yeah, she felt afraid, and she was told through her friends not to speak when she was in these little tiny small towns.
This episode brought to you by protandemcanada.lifevantage.com. What if you could turn on your body to work like it was supposed to? What if you could have it remember how to handle toxins, stress, and the environment like it used to when you were young? What if it worked for your pets too? What if this is not about supplementing something that is missing, but activating something that has gone dormant? About actually turning on your body to make these things again. Learn how to activate your body now. Check us out, protandemcanada.lifevantage.com.
So there's so many questions I have. So your mom now, does she share this story often, or do you know a lot of this story before you elicit it out of her? Like, is she open about it?
She's more open about it than she was before, for sure. When I was a small kid, I remember always somewhat hearing the story from my mother because every single time I got in trouble, she would just tell me, I was like, you know what I had to do to get you to here, kind of thing. And she would kind of tell me in Cole's notes what happened. I kind of knew the story from when I was a young kid, but I didn't really know what actually happened. I had absolutely no clue. So again, when I grew up, I thought it was an interesting story, but and as I had kids myself, I felt like maybe, I should probably learn more about, the history or, what she had to go through. And after reading a lot of part of the histories of China itself, and during that time, which is actually very interesting, and marrying up a lot of the information of what my mother told me, it just comes to the point where it's engrossing, and as I do the interview, and that's how I started the whole thing is I did interviews with her, and I recorded all the interviews. And after about 100 hours of these interviews, I started really getting the full story of what was actually happening. And it wasn't just, like I said, it wasn't just a swim. There was a lot more involved than just that part. And that's where I thought, I'm like, okay, well, instead of just a small thing about a swimming portion, there's a whole bigger portion of the story to be told to the people.
Yeah. As far as where we are now, do you see any parallels, or any, I guess, concerns, or with like, is your mom, would she have any concerns about anything that we are seeing in society now?
Yeah, we do have this discussion quite a bit, actually, especially about political situations that are happening. It is kind of weird when I first started writing the book, which was approximately like 7, 8 years ago. Which I thought was an interesting story, but I didn't really think there was I mean, there's always parallels to the story that you're writing, but as the years have gone on and the years when the books were completed and obviously out in the market, you start seeing a real huge comparison or parallel to certain situations that are occurring now, especially in the political climate of both, US and Canada. And I do have this discussion with mom all the time, and how much she obviously came to a country to be free from tyranny of all these things. And then she looks back into some of the stuff and says, well, it's like, we don't want to go back there. So she looks at the news that's happening today, and it's like, well, it's like, how far down the road is it going to go until it is exactly where she was from before? I mean, we still have a long ways to go in that way. And I do believe that the Canadian people are obviously people that are free, but we do see a parallel of how far it can go down the road, which can be dangerous. My mom's went through it. She obviously doesn't want to go through it again. I never went through it. So I try to, I guess, listen to her, at least listen to my elders, I guess, and maybe take some tips from what she had to endure for me not to go through the same things that she did before.
Yeah. I guess that would be any parent's dream, hey, is to have their kids not have to go through their own mistakes.
Yeah, I think that's probably a good point. I made a lot of mistakes that they went through too, and now as a parent, I'm like, okay, I'm trying to tell my kids, but who knows if that actually will happen down the future with my kids.
So, as far as the book is concerned, what is the most important part of it, do you think?
Huh, man, that's actually a really good question. You know what? I really think for me personally, and I'll split this in two parts. I mean, for me personally, is to really listen to your parents and really understand what they had to go through. And it's not just my mother that went through something hard. There's a lot of parents of this era, and with what's happened in Canada in the history in the past, and in the U.S. or even other countries. I really do believe that you should listen to people and listen what they had to go through, because it's not all for nothing what they had to endure to deal with. And if we can just at least do that, we can at least try not to repeat history, I guess, in certain ways for me. So that's the most important part for me. I mean, but the most important part for the book is really about loyalty and trust, and just to do the things that have to be done. I mean, my mother didn't know how the future what was gonna occur. She didn't know if she was gonna live or die, but she knew through her passion, her trust, and her honesty that she had to do something about it, and she did. And at least I have to give her props for that. And it's the one thing that I get out of it. I mean, at least she had the willpower to go through something that was really hard. And I'm hoping that as I go through life, I have the willpower to do something extremely hard too. And knowing that she had to go through it, maybe I can go through it too, and be successful. So if it's not in just business, or it's in writing a book, or if it's any other projects that I have, something that's hard, I at least have the willpower to at least do it.
So, I want to talk about your willpower and some of the other things that you're doing. First of all, your mom, when she did this story and this book and what she accomplished and what she went through, did she live a life knowing that she had a way bigger purpose? Like, did she feel like like she had done this for a reason? Was she I guess the question I'm really asking is, did she go through life and parent you guys with this innate knowledge that she had come here, survived something incredibly hard, and was here for a reason?
I always do wonder that to this day. I mean, I think she doesn't give herself enough credit, and I think she's a very humble person. So I don't know how much she thinks that she affected my life or a lot of other readers' lives in their own ways and in their own journeys. But I hope she does. I hope she does recognize that, and I hope if she ever watches this podcast, or she listens to so much reviews that I've gotten from the book in itself, that she does believe that what she has a higher meaning to just not just her, but to a lot of other people itself. I really do believe that she does, and I think a lot of other people do. I'm hoping that she's honest to herself and says in the future that it's like, you know what, I'm glad that she has two sons, and they're hopefully, I mean, we're both healthy and somewhat self-sustaining and successful. So I'm hoping she's proud of that, and she has four grandkids. So I think there's a higher meaning in having a family, and a larger family, which she may not have if she did stay or anything else like that too. So I think she does. I think she has meaning in family, and family is very important to us and for her too.
So tell us about some of the other things that you're doing and some of the other things that you're involved in, and do you take this same, I guess, this same question and the same purpose of your mom's journey, and do you feel a sense of pressure or obligation to carry that forward in your own life?
All the time. The pressure is actually extremely hard sometimes, because you never want to upset my mother. So she I mean, I had to make sure that the book was done right, and the book was done properly, because if the book and the story was really good, but the writing was really bad, I'd probably hear it from my mother. So, and I like to think so. I like to think I go through my life using her as an example. Probably not the best sometimes, but I do try. And yeah, it's important for me to put if I'm gonna do something, I would put all the effort I needed to get to be successful in it. And successful doesn't have to be just in the terms of money, or in terms of people reading it, or whatever. It's just my personal satisfaction that it's been completed, and to complete the best I can, not anybody else's satisfaction for that. Yeah, I mean, she has, obviously she's still present to this day, but I mean, in the future, and I'm hoping that I teach my daughters the same thing, and they use that as examples. Hopefully, in generations down the road, they will look at my mother as the shining example of willpower and hard work, I guess.
So you compete in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. Tell us about that. Tell us what you have learned from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
Yeah, you know what? I started off probably about 14 years ago. It actually started as a joke, so it actually started as an MMA thing where I'm like, wow, why would anybody want to do this? It's kind of weird and crazy, And I was in a downward spiral with my life a little bit, with being a little obese, and having no willpower. And I had a close friend of mine at that time. I didn't know who he was, but he's a close friend of mine now. He says, "Yeah, you want to try Brazilian Jiu Jitsu and MMA?" And I did. He said, "I can teach you," and I said, "Yeah, sure, why not?" So, and the first day I did it, I fell in love with it, and ever since then, I've been doing it for the last 14 years. I'm a black belt under Pedro Lot, and I compete internationally. I've won two world master titles, one in Las Vegas and
Wow.
one in LA. And yeah, it's part of my life, and it's part of the things that I enjoy doing. And it's not just like you said. It's just like any other sport when it comes to like stress reliever or strength training or anything else. But to me, it's a mental thing where I'm totally engrossed with it, and I love it, and I just want to keep on going with it.
What would you say to young kids uh, that are thinking about getting into martial arts or into jiu-jitsu? What would you tell them?
You know what? The hardest part of anything to do with martial arts is just getting through the door. And as soon as you through your door, I don't think there's any other issues after that. Because if you do fall in love with it, you will fall in love with it and you'll always come back to it. It may not be for everybody. So you may do one thing and you're like, you know what? I don't know if it was that was that one thing. I would recommend you try something else. Because just like sports, there's basketball, there's hockey, there's golf, there's all these other different types of things, all different activities. You may not like basketball, but you may really like baseball. And that goes the same thing with martial arts. You may not like what I love, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, but maybe I'll love the like taekwondo or kung fu or karate or Brazilian jiu-jitsu or MMA. So there's a lot of different things that people may enjoy and like. So yeah, try something, and if you don't like it, try something else. If that's something you want to do, you just keep on trying until you find something that you do truly enjoy.
What part of this story or this journey do you think led you to the EPS?
Well, no, that's actually an interesting question, I guess. You know what? I actually just do enjoy helping people and try to protect people. So I think that's part of it. And especially for my mother. My mother feels like I always felt like my mother was at least a authority figure to me in certain ways. She taught me lessons, and I feel like maybe police work was probably a lot similar to me that way. Something I can actually give back to the community and give back to people and try to help somebody and helping them in any which way possible. It might not be just the most common things that a police officer would do, but also like it's through support. And I always try to help people in that way. So I think that's actually a pretty relatable when it comes to about my family, but also about me.
So I'm curious, did your mom ever have contact with any of her family back in China?
Well, to this day, I mean, there was no more living members of her family in China anymore. Um, her brother, who also came to Canada, passed away about 5 years ago, which I was really close to. So her brother passed away from that, and she still has a sister in Oakland, and she had one sister in San Francisco. But there is no living members left in China for her. When she I don't want to ruin the end of the novel, but my mother's mother passed away while she was over here quite a while ago. So there is no living members of them living there anymore. There are a couple people in China during that time, which was approximately about a decade ago, who I tried to interview, and they were actually characters or people that were in the book, and we tried to get a hold of them, and we knew that they possibly still would be alive, but we were never able to get a hold of them. And all the other people that were in the novel in itself, we didn't really know who they were anymore because they didn't actually really give their real names to each other just for that specific purposes of being when they were caught. So they didn't know who they were. So when they were caught, two of them, we still don't know what happened to them to this day.
So she has two sisters. Did they come over after her?
Yeah, my sister was one of the youngest ones. My mother's brother, he was able to escape out of China through, which was a lot easier way, was he found a boat and he pretty much stole the boat and rowed himself into a different country. He kind of did the same thing because they were part of the same group of people. But yeah, he was able to get away by pretty much stealing a boat on the shoreline and then going away that way. My sisters were quite a bit older than her. Were able to leave actually because they were a higher status in within the government kind of thing, and they were able to move on and get away and move on from there.
Okay. So, as far as like, maybe just give us a grasp of what they were actually escaping from. Like, what did daily life look like?
Yeah, yeah. You know what? It all started pretty innocently, where when the government took over and they wanted to combine everything. So at first she was saying, "Oh, it wasn't too bad." There was rice, there was meat, there was, we would all have to, eat in the same room or commune, and we had all these things. But as that time was going on, the government made some drastic mistakes in their policies, and that's what led to what the Great Famine is, and what Mao Zedong calls the Great Leap Forward. So at that time, there were a lot of incidents occurred where they would misfarm a lot of the stuff that they had, and they made a lot, again, policy mistakes where a famine started to happen. And as the famine continued on, there would be less and less food, but the government was always forcing the workers to create more because at that time the government was trying really, really hard to show the Soviet government that they were better than them. So they were trying to overproduce and produce more harvest and produce more steel and produce all these different things, which never went back to the people, only just went to other countries or to the government itself. And as that time goes on, when she was starting to really get weary of what was happening, there were deaths everywhere. I mean, there were deaths from starvation, there's deaths from the soldiers. There's people trying to leave all the time. They're dying, which same journey that my mother took. There were plenty of people, which they ended up naming in the freedom swimmers, that they were on average like almost for every 10 people that tried to swim across parts of the ocean, only one would survive that. So there was a huge amount of deaths at that time. And some of the deaths and a lot of the things weren't even recorded. So they can't even tell you exactly how many people actually passed away during that time because none of these names were recorded. And they were saying, and some of these studies, a lot of them are saying that this was probably the second most deaths since World War II. That's how many deaths actually did occur. But a lot of these were just swept under the rug because the government was like saying that everything was fine, but while everything was not fine.
So, does the Chinese community here in Canada know about this book?
Yes, some of them probably do. Actually, I'm working on a documentary right now regarding not just the book by itself, but also other people that have left the country. And the one thing I did find was a lot of people were acknowledge of what occurs, but they're not willing to speak out about it because of what's happening with the world right now, and especially with the relationships between the Chinese and the Canadians. And they also have possibly still have family over there. And they don't really want to really get tied up in certain situations like this where they may be recorded or speak up about it. There are a small group of people that are willing to talk about it, but a large majority of the people are actually still fairly um, quiet about it. They don't really want to talk about it. They may tell their kids or their grandkids, but they're not really public about it for sure. I've had spoken to probably about 50 to 20 people, all reluctant to share the story to the public, all willing to tell me personally what it was about. And my mom's pretty strong. And I don't know if she was reluctant or not, but she was forthcoming at the end about the story. And yeah, she's a big advocate of, again, freedom of speech and obviously, like I said, anti-communism, and like I said, just fighting for her rights. And like I said, she is a big advocate of that stuff.
So, what would you say that Canadians can learn from this, and like the younger generation now, or even our generation? What do you think that that we should take heed from this?
Well, I think there's a lot of messages. I mean, not including like which we already talked about willpower and hard work. I mean, I think we can instill the younger generation about that. I'm not saying that they don't have hard work or willpower, but I mean, I think back in the old days is probably even include like the farmers of the Canadian farmers back in the older days and how much hard work they had to go through to just get grains or to get grains of wheat or anything else like that. So I do believe like willpower and hard work are very good messages about it, but also the slippery slope of the government policies, you know, and just like how far are we willing to go in certain directions and to really question those abilities to make sure that our freedoms are still intact. And I think that's really important because we don't really, if you read the book and you read the end result of even though the book is truncated of the years that my mother went through, but imagine going through many years of situations like that and how far we started she thought it was, hey, everything was okay still, you know, it's not the best, to it's really, really bad. And how fast that slope really goes down and how far we're willing to go down that road. So I do believe that's a really important factor in this whole situation. And like I said, I really do believe that family values is an important thing too that's touched upon in the book because family is a really important factor in anything and to and including me to really just believe in, like I said, to really believe in the past and really believe in your parents' history and how those things that what they did affects you and their lives at this time. So everything in the book touches upon something what we have to go through now.
Do you think our family values are under attack?
Well, I think in some ways it possibly very likely can be. I mean, I I think like I do believe that we still have a lot of freedoms in this country that no other country has. So we're definitely grateful for that. It's just like how far we're willing to take it. And I'm not a huge political person. I'm not hugely on the right. I'm not hugely on the left, you know, but you got to take all these things. And I feel like I'm more in the center of everything, you know, common sense, you know, kind of thing. So I do believe that if we do some of the stuff that we do now and down the road and you kind of see where it could possibly be going, it might not be the greatest thing, you know? Maybe it's not something that we really want to do. And regardless of what you feel of your thoughts of what's happening, you know, for even the last week has been pretty politically crazy when it comes to all these different things that's happening, you know?
Yeah, I feel like there's so much division. Did that happen in China as well? Were the people divided before was there a concerted, and I'm not necessarily relating what's happening here in Canada, but we see so much I feel like, people are just being shaken up and a lot of it isn't relevant. And so it's just for this public and this, it used to be that we wouldn't necessarily know and be incensed by something unless it was like, right here. And so now all of these different opinions and stuff, and you see people that, were friends that don't like each other anymore because they have different opinions and all the rest of it. So I guess what would you give as words of advice to stay away from any type of divisive type of tactics?
Well, I can give you an example of the book where there were people always watching my mother and her mother during that time because they knew if they were instigators or people that are on the other side of the fence, they're willing to watch it because they're more of the government people, you know, and she's anti-governments. Yeah, I mean, how we have it, you know, how we see our world this day, I mean, which is very, like you said, divisive, and there's one way to another. From the examples I get and how when my mother talked about it, it was the exact same thing in certain ways, you know? And it's like, and how we talk about how relevant things are these days and how like so how divisive we are now. We look at what I think she went through. It was like it was the exact same thing. It was like there were people watching her. There, if she did something bad, they would report her to the government officials, you know, and they would be punished for all these things. Obviously, that's the extreme of that one side of the spectrum, but we can kind of see what's kind of happening now. I'm not saying it's going down that route, but I'm just saying how far does it go down that route that we do not want to have situations like that, and we always have to keep that in mind. And that's all I'm always saying is that you have to keep that in mind and the things like the outcomes that possibilities in the future. We definitely don't want to have a full government controlled or state controlled government where things are happening, but at the same time there are also bad things happening on the other end too. So we just want to be, like I said, more centralized in how we think, and just to be kind to each other. It's really pretty much all I have to say about that. It's like
Yeah.
we really could be kinder to somebody, to just everybody. It just seems to be everybody wants to be enemies with each other now.
Yeah. I feel like there's been a lot of humanity lost. And really, I feel like, so much of, but yet we all have the same things. We all have the same wishes. We all, most of us have the same aspirations and different things. Yeah. So I think exactly like you just said, it comes down to us all being a part of humanity. What, uh, do you have any plans for this to be into a motion picture or movie?
You're not the first person to ask about it. Actually, there's a few people that have asked about it, and I have been in talks with a few people actually regarding making a documentary or continuing on with the story in one way or another. There hasn't been any scripts for motion pictures of any sort. That'd be kind of a great idea, but nothing of that sort yet. But I do want to continue on with the story one way or another. And if it's not just about my mother's stories, about everybody, a lot of other people's stories too, and not just about my mother. And it'd be great, but nothing yet regarding a motion picture of any sort.
What would be your mom's advice to most people now, do you think?
You know what? Just like how she's been a pretty straightforward person, and pretty simple. All she tells me all the time when I was a young kid to now is to work hard and to be kind and do something that you want to do. I mean, that's all she always emphasized. There was nothing else about anything else, like have a great family, do whatever you want to do because you live in a country that, it gives you the freedom to do it. So, yeah, I mean, she doesn't have any grand advice when it comes to like life or outcomes or whatever you want to do. All she says is work hard and make a life for yourself. That's it.
I think that is like, if I knew all my children were succeeding and so happy in what they were doing, to me that is like the ultimate success. They're happy and they're doing something that makes them happy. It'll be successful in every stretch of the um
I totally agree with you now. I mean, as a person that has younger kids, I can totally relate to that now. I probably couldn't relate to it about 15 years ago, but I could totally relate to it now. If my kids are successful and they're working hard, I can't be any happier.
How old are your kids, Tony?
One's 16 and one just turned 18 actually. So they're getting grown up now, but they're still young to me, I guess.
Are they more scared of you or your mom?
Well, they're scared of mom. That's for sure. I don't think they're even scared at all. So
Well, it's been an absolute honor speaking with you about this. And tell us how people can get this book. We'll have links up in the show notes and stuff as well. But tell us where people can find this. If anybody has any things that they want to reach out to you on, how can people get a hold of you? Just let us know where you can be contacted and where we can buy this.
well, you can get the book in any platform practically, and there is an audio book out on Audibles. So even if you don't like reading, you can listen to it in Audibles. You can pick it up in any platform. Amazon is the biggest platform for the book, so you can buy the paperback, the hardcover book, and the ebook in itself. You can also get it from the library. So if you go in any library, a lot of them do carry it, but if they don't carry it, they can always order it in. So I'm on the platform for the libraries for them to get it in, and they'll always order one in for that here. You can reach me at, well, Goodreads is a great platform where you can ask authors questions, and if you read the book and you like the book, please put a review in on not just Amazon but on Goodreads. You can reach me in there, and they send me private messages on that. And yeah, that's pretty much the only place that you can really get to it, but you can get the book pretty much anywhere.
Well, lately, in the news and in different, things, we've had a lot of discussions about books in schools. My personal recommendation would be that we have this book, The Freedom Swimmers, available in all of our schools for, junior high and high school. And I would fully endorse that statement.
Well, that is a suggestion, and it has been done for some book clubs, and some schools have done it during class. I've got one book report back. Actually, they did a book report on it with a presentation to the school. Then he sent me an email with the pictures of the whole thing, and which I was delighted to hear. So yes, that is a great suggestion. I would hope every school does read it and enjoy it, but also learn something from it too. So yes, that's a great suggestion.
Well, Tony, thank you for memorializing your not only your mom's life, but so many others that, have done arduous journeys to, come to the land of milk and honey, as we say, but just telling a hard story. And I would say thank you to your mom and thank you for persevering and for doing what you had to do, even though it was hard, to on the promise of a hope of something better. So what what an amazing testament to doing hard things.
Well, thank you very much. And like I said, I will relay that to my mother, and she would gladly hear that. And like I said, I'm very happy to be here, and thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Before we jump off, is there anything else that you wanted to share or think that we missed on this?
No, I think you touched on everything that's been great. I mean, like I said, just read the book, and if you do enjoy it, please put in a review. It's really important that we do get reviews on it, because the more reviews come in, the more it goes up in the algorithm, and the more people get suggested the book, and that's the most important thing.
Well, thank you for everything that you do, Tony, and it's been a pleasure to be acquainted to you.
Well, thank you very much.